Mr. Mayor, I believe we are set to go, and I see that Councillor Stewart is here now.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Council, members of SLT, and the viewing public. I see we have quorum, so I will call this regular council meeting of Monday, December 7th in session. And first up is the approval of the agenda. Is there any questions concerning the agenda? Councillor Hahn?
Yes, the Mayor, I'd like to add a notice of motion further down the list.
Can go ahead.
So you want me to talk about what it is now, or just that I'm doing a notice of motion?
Oh no. Okay, just we'll save that then for the for that particular part of the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Any points on the agenda? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. On a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink, be it resolved that the agenda for the December 7th, 2020 regular meeting of Council be adopted as amended with the addition by Councillor Hahn. Is there any discussion on the amendment to add or the motion to adopt as amended? I'll call for the vote then, starting with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay. Next on the agenda is their disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Is there any councillor with a declaration of pecuniary interest to declare? And Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a pecuniary interest to declare on item 13. It's a bylaw to extend the masks. And as I'm still stitching masks, I need to not participate.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Any other declarations? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk, please note. And next up is the presentations and 4.11 COVID-19 update, Community Emergency Management Coordinator, Chief Limburner. Chief, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor, Council, SLT, and all viewing members of the public. A couple quick points in our current situation. As of today, Pelham has a total case count of 76 cases. We have active cases of 6, and we have one municipality in Niagara that has 0 active cases. Across the region, we had 20 today. We're at 2,317 cases with a total recovered number of 1987, and we're at 87 deaths. Across the province, we're at 131,000 total cases with 3,794 deaths. Canada-wide, we're at 419,000 cases with approximately 336,000 recovered, with 12,725 recovered. In Niagara, our case doubling time is at 63 days. Our reproductive rate is at 1.1. Our positivity rate is at 1.7. The provincial rate is over 5%. We're currently working with 13 outbreaks. Public health has resolved 88 of outbreaks, 88 cases. As far as infection goes, 53.6% females, 46.4% in males, predominantly in our younger age people, 20 to 29. The spread, 66.2% is close contact. Community spread at 24.7. Travel is at 6.1. Today, the region has begun a site survey for all municipalities looking for or to establish inoculation sites. What they'd like to do is establish at least one per municipality. And we started entering that data today into their system. Pelham has offered up 2 sites as of today, and we'll see where that goes. The region remains in orange, and we look at the 7 indicators that the province looks at to move people or health units in and out of the colors. Our actual indicators have improved over last week's numbers, so we're going in the right direction. Provincially, in the past week, 84% of all new cases are coming from the red and the lockdown areas, which really poses a problem. But if we can keep these people from traveling into the lower areas or the yellow and orange areas, then it's going to reduce our numbers. This Saturday, the 12th, is Pelham has their reverse Santa Claus parade. Put some final details about it today, and it looks like it's well organized, and it's taking place, or will be taking place, at Centennial Park on Saturday. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments on this report? I guess my question to you, Chief, if I may, is where are the 2 locations that the town will be offering for the outlet on the vaccines? Can you, are you at liberty to say that?
Yes, we did the information today, the MCC and Fire Station 1. There's quite an extensive criteria that they've asked for, and those 2 buildings meet those criteria.
So then the Niagara Regional Health Unit will pick either or?
This is pretty early in the planning stages. The next step they'll reach out to us. They'll attend the site with the staff, and they'll do an evaluation, and they'll pick the site that's best accommodates their efforts. And there's quite a number of factors to consider. So it's totally up to them. I would imagine that they'll, Pelham being the size relatively small, they'll have they'll pick one site for Pelham.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions, comments on his report? If not, I'll return to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from B. Limburner, Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator, for information. If there are no further questions, members of Council, we will move to the vote, starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay. Next up on the COVID-19 update is the CAO with his report. Mr. Cribbs, you have the floor.
Good evening, Council. Do you have any sort of outstanding remaining points?
Mr. CAO, just a moment. We're having some audio problems. I'm just going to double check the mic at the podium.
We hear you, but we're having some distortion.
If you'd just like to try again, Mr. CAO, please.
Good.
Hello, testing.
Much better, thank you.
Yep, that's good.
Saying brilliant things here? No, maybe. With respect to ice rentals at the MCC, staff are pleased to report that we've experienced no decline in revenue thus far. You'll recall that week and a half ago, it was announced that there'd be no more rentals to persons from outside the health unit area. I'll note that a majority and possibly all municipalities in Niagara have now followed suit. We were the first to announce, and then it sort of led to we were the first domino, I guess, and it led to a widespread adoption of that policy. We have had some user groups that have 1 or 2 members that are from outside of area, and those members are simply no longer able to attend, but it hasn't resulted in the loss of any actual overall group revenues. And our staff are screening and asking questions, where do you reside when people are seeking admittance, and anyone from Niagara is granted and anyone from outside Niagara is not. So that's been well handled, and there's been no financial impact to doing the thing that's we believe in the best public health interest of the community. So a win on both accounts, I believe. And subject to questions, that's what I have for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Any questions, comments on the CAO's report? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cripps, CAO, for information. If there are no further questions, members of Council, we'll move to the vote, starting with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries.
Next on the agenda is delegations. We have a delegation from Crown Grove Estates, Inc. for a site plan agreement on Shops on the 20. Madam Clerk, could you introduce them perhaps?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this evening we have with us Neil Soberman representing the proposal, Crown Grove Estates, Inc., with regard to Shops on 20.
Okay. Sir, you have the floor.
Good evening. Good evening, council members and Mr. Mayor. My name is Neil Soberman. I'm very excited to be here in Pelham tonight via Zoom as a representative for Crown Grove Estates, Inc., the applicant for the site plan approval that is before you. After my presentation, I will be introducing Ali Hamdi from Petrov Architects to discuss the site plan design, and Stephen Lerner from McDonald's to discuss the relocation of their existing restaurant. Fonthill has seen tremendous growth over the last number of years, and with the overwhelming success of the Meridian Community Center and the establishment of Wellspring Niagara, and the thousands of new homes that are proposed to be built over the next 5 to 10 years, many of those homes which have already been built and many are currently under construction. We are no stranger to Pelham. Over the last 20 years, we have been developing commercial properties in Fonthill. Our first project was the redevelopment of the Shoppers Drug Mart Plaza. Recently, we have completed the Fonthill Marketplace as part of the East Fonthill Secondary Plan. And today, we are building on that success with our new commercial plaza known as Shops on 20. Shops on 20 sits on 3 acres of land fronting Highway 20. It consists of 3 freestanding buildings. The site will be anchored by 2 drive-throughs and 1 CRU, commercial retail unit. The leases have been signed with both McDonald's, a 4,600 square foot restaurant, and Starbucks, a 2,200 square foot coffee shop. Both these anchors will have internal drive-throughs. The CRU building, which will sit between the 2 drive-throughs, consists of 9 retail units totaling 19,200 square feet. The total development will be approximately 26,000 square feet. We are also showing approximately 3/4 of an acre labeled Parcel A, Phase 2 on our site plan. We have entered into a conditional purchase and sale agreement with a local developer for those lands. We have not seen a proposed site plan, but we understand that the developer has had preliminary discussions with the planning department. There are 2 unique challenges that had to be resolved with respect to this property. One of those was the right-in and right-out on Highway 20 as exhibited on our site plan. The challenge was finding a way to prevent vehicles from making illegal left turns out of the development onto Highway 20 and also to keep the traffic flowing. We worked with Niagara Region to successfully design a median on Highway 20 that would prevent that occurrence. The other challenges was complexities of the grades due to the topography of the Fonthill landscape. We have gone to great lengths to design a plan taking into account those grades that encourages public accessibility and walkability from Highway 20. We have also worked with the town staff to comply with the sanitary diversion project. As I'm sure you can appreciate, in addition to the physical challenges that have been placed before us, it has been difficult attracting new retail to the site due to the current COVID-19 situation. I would now like to turn over our presentation to Ali Hamdi, a senior partner at Petrov Architects.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for the privilege of your time. I'd like to first start off by discussing the site and the site plan design. The proposed site forms part of the Town of Pelham East Fonthill Mixed-Use Center and fronts onto the Highway 20 thoroughfare and sides onto Wellspring Way. The specific zoning for this site is EFMU 1, which is expected to accommodate the primary retail facilities of the mixed-use center. In addition to an array of commercial uses, retail and restaurant uses are permitted under this zoning designation. In conformance with the zoning and the Fonthill Master Plan guidelines, the new development will be comprised of 3 single-story commercial buildings, 2 drive-throughs, and an at-grade parking field. The 3 buildings are planned to be Building 1, which is the building on the left. That will be the freestanding McDonald's with a drive-through and a patio. Building 2, the middle building, will be a building that contains multi-tenant commercial units. And Building 3, the building on the right, that will be a freestanding Starbucks with a patio and a drive-through. Buildings 1 and 3 will be designed and purpose-built for McDonald's and Starbucks, respectively, for them to solely occupy. Building 2 will be designed to accommodate multiple tenants and a range of uses for future market flexibility. Again, in conformance with the Fonthill Master Plan guidelines, the 3 buildings are positioned at the property's north frontage, framing Highway 20 with the parking to the south. This building arrangement along the street provides views into the site and facilitates pedestrian access, while at the same time effectively screening and concealing the parking field from street view. Several pedestrian linkages to the property are proposed in the form of sidewalks, low stairs, and ramps. And these are all configured to connect to the Highway 20 urban trail. In fact, this site has been designed with a real focus on enhancing these pedestrian linkages, outdoor shared public spaces, through building orientation and placement, and through landscaping and site lighting design. And so regardless of whether our guests arrive to the property by car or by bike or by foot, the intent of this site design is to maximize our visitors' comfort and safety. If I could ask for the next slide, please. Thank you. So let's expand a little bit further on how the landscape and lighting design plays an important role by enhancing and supporting the public spaces that surround this new built environment. A coherent landscaping design is proposed, both internal to the site as well as along the street frontages. As Neil Soberman just mentioned, one thing to really point out here is the topography, the natural topography of the site relative to both Wellspring Way and Highway 20 means that we're going to have a grade differential along the perimeter of our site between the site and the streets. In other words, our site is going to be elevated relative to both of these streets. And so we have taken advantage of this change in grade by introducing a significant amount of soft landscaping at various planting heights, a treatment that will enhance the public boulevard and reinforce the street vista. As mentioned, as a result of this change in grade, pedestrian access from the Highway 20 urban trail will be in the form of level sidewalks where possible, but in some cases, it'll have to be in the form of stairs and ramps to traverse the change in grade. Our site design will include deciduous trees, shrubs, and ornamental grasses, and is enriched with decorative street furniture that will include benches and bicycle parking located along the accessible paths. The internal parking area is designed to be visually appealing as well as functional. A vast, continuous parking field has been avoided by dividing the parking field into smaller pods. And these pods have been coordinated with clear through lot pedestrian walkways that support safe, public, and accessible use. Additional landscaping located within curbed planting islands at the outer ends of the parking rows minimizes storefront sightline interference while visually softening the parking field and effectively controlling traffic flows through the site. The drive-throughs, loading, and garbage service areas have been positioned such that they will be screened from view from Highway 20 by the proposed buildings and by landscape buffers. In other words, they're generally located behind the buildings they serve and are hidden from street view. Landscape planting will also be used to further soften and screen these service areas from the public spaces within the site. All site lighting and lighting fixtures will be integrated and designed to enhance the streetscape and architecture. Luminaire types will support vehicular traffic requirements as well as provide pedestrian scale lighting along the interior walkways. If I may ask, will you go to the next slide, please? Next up, I would like to, too far, one back, please. Thank you. Next up, I would like to walk you through the design of the proposed buildings themselves. These four images you may recognize as the Highway 20 street views of the existing Fonthill Marketplace Shopping Center, just west of our development. The design intent of our new development is to carry forward a similar massing and design character of this popular and well-established shopping center, which, as mentioned, is a property that he has developed in the past, and we happen to be the architects for. These high-quality commercial buildings have been designed to have a great street presence and have strong visual impact through the use of a variety of complementary colors, materials, use of glazing, and creative architectural details and enhanced massing. Now, next slide, please. Too far again, sorry. One back. Thank you. So this is a street elevation of the new development, as will be seen from Highway 20. As you can see, and in conformance with Fonthill's urban design guidelines, the building facades are well proportioned and provide animation and visual interest to the street. A variety of storefront styles and types are proposed that are made up of a balanced and mixed pattern of transparent and light-colored opaque glass in combination with decorative facade elements such as projecting awnings, canopies, and light fixtures. These elements have been carefully and cohesively integrated into the design in such a manner that will create depth, animation, and an expressive facade at each of the buildings facing Highway 20 without interfering or confounding with the internal commercial layouts. Changes in roof parapet heights are also proposed to give the buildings a pleasing proportion and massing. Next slide, please. Thank you. The elevations are designed with both vertical and horizontal elements that are intended to break up large expanses and create a human scale to the built environment. The tenant signage on the facades will be self-illuminated individual letters, not sign boxes. And these will be carefully integrated into the design in such a manner that the signage will not overwhelm or clash with the architectural expression of the buildings. Next slide, please. Thank you. Central to our goal of creating an inviting built environment at this site is the design of thoughtfully articulated buildings. To this end, careful attention has been given to the detailing of all building facades, with particular attention to those that face and flank Highway 20. In the case of the McDonald's and Starbucks building pads, we were able to configure the building interiors in such a manner that the highly articulated primary building entrances and patios for both buildings will face Highway 20 and will directly connect to the Highway 20 urban trail. Next slide, please. High quality and resilient masonry and aluminum cladding in combination with a palette of complementary colors, textures, and finishes have been chosen to give each of the buildings in this development an attractive aesthetic look that will be of a higher order than what you might otherwise see at a standard typical retail plaza. We are quite pleased with the upscale design of these new buildings and anticipate that they will contribute positively to the urban character of Fonthill. The buildings are both bold in design and architecturally harmonious in scale and character, the buildings that we find currently in this area. Together, the integrated site and building design will add up to a successful development that we expect will meet the needs of the community it serves while embracing the evolving, vibrant growth in this burgeoning area. With that, I thank you, Mayor and Council, for your attention. This concludes my part of the presentation of the project. I would like to now turn this over to Stephen Lerner, representative from McDonald's. Thank you.
Just checking to see Mr. Mayor and members of council. This is Stephen Lerner. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is, as I said, Stephen Lerner, and I'm an area real estate manager with McDonald's Restaurants of Canada. I want to thank you for giving me some time on the agenda tonight. I'll be very brief. Mr. Hamdi covered most of the our stuff. So we've been at our current location in Fonthill on Highway 20 for 25 years now. And as the community has grown, we've grown with it to the point where our current restaurant can no longer actually keep up with the demand. So as such, we're thrilled to be a part of the Shops on 20 project, which, as you might know, is approximately 300 meters just to the east of our current location. At a little less than 2,000 square feet and 40 seats, our current restaurant is simply too small to allow us to properly and efficiently serve our customers. So our new restaurant will actually be more in the range of 4,600 square feet with 80 seats, a modern side-by-side internal drive-through, and all the other enhancements we've made to our restaurants over the past 25 years. It's also very important to note that as we move into this larger facility, our staff is going to grow with it. We currently employ 7 people in management positions, and this will grow to 11 positions. And as well, our crew is currently at 50 members, and this will grow to 80 members as we enlarge and go to our larger restaurant, combining full-time and part-time positions. So as you can see, significant and very beneficial to the local community. Through working with the planning department and Ali and Neil, we understand what's important to Fonthill and the residents, and we've made every effort to comply with those requirements. Our building placement and orientation on the site provides excellent visibility to Highway 20 with direct pedestrian access, so accessibility for both walkers and cyclists is very easy and convenient. And our patio also allows easy interaction with what is going on along Highway 20. We're very confident that our customers that we serve in Fonthill are going to be very happy with their new McDonald's, and we expect to continue to serve these customers for years to come. Thanks again for giving me the time in the agenda, and have a great evening.
Thank you for your presentation. Madam Clerk, is it now time to go to questions from council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, if members of council have any questions of the presenters, now would be the appropriate time. I do just want to remind all of the meeting participants to mute your microphones if you are not speaking, so that we can reduce the background noise. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions or comments on the presentations made by the 3 gentlemen tonight? Councillor Hahn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. A couple of things. First question I have is with regards to the lighting, the pole lighting and such on the buildings. Will that be considered down lighting? In other words, I'm sure you've heard of the Dark Skies initiatives. As we move forward in our community, of course, that is a goal. So just wanting to ensure that it's going to be down lighting. Is that something that's on the horizon?
Councillor, yes, I will verify, but I can say with certainty that all of the lights are all down lights. But we can verify that for you and get an answer back through Barbara Weeds to you.
Okay, thank you. And another point I wanted to make, and I guess I'm a little perplexed. I noticed this is something quite common in a lot of drive-throughs, but I'm always a little surprised when pedestrians are having to kind of do a Frogger through a parking lot and a drive-through to get into the building. It just seems a little bit perplexing why in both cases for Starbucks and for McDonald's, anybody who's going to park their car and actually go into the restaurant to eat would actually have to cut through the line of moving traffic, which is in fact the drive-through traffic. Can you explain, I guess, the thinking behind this? That would be appreciated.
No, it's fair question. Absolutely. You know, there's always a dilemma. You know, there's multiple intentions here of hiding the drive-through, hiding the parking, and you know, accessibility from the front and so on. But I can tell you that, you know, these drive-throughs are always designed so that the crossing happens at the end of the drive-through. And so people are naturally stopped at that point. There will be stop signs and watch for pedestrian sign style signage, warn drivers that, you know, this is a place to be alert and be careful moving forward. So, you know, all of the precautions are taken in terms of ensuring that, you know, our parked customers who are going from the car to the restaurant and back can do so safely and carefully. But no, I understood, and I think that's why the model of these drive-throughs are always such that we're not crossing through the active lane. It's always just beyond the pickup window where people are already naturally stopped in their cars.
And one more point I'd like to make too. It's a question, and that is with regards to long box trucks. So if somebody has a long box truck and is going through a drive-through, sometimes you see drive-throughs where they have to do, you know, 3-point turn and drive-through to get around the corner. I'm sure it's on a small screen. It's very difficult to see, but it looks like it's a rather sharp turn exiting the McDonald's parking lot. I'm guessing you've taken that into consideration where somebody has really able to make that turn. It just looks,
Yeah.
when I looked here, I thought, oh, the first thing that popped in my mind is that's a really tight turn.
Well, no, absolutely. It's a good observation. I think you'll note that the part of the drive-through, that's where you do that, let's call it a hairpin turn. We have widened that significantly. It's 3.5 and 3 meters. So, you know, we're talking about 18 feet or essentially a car length width at the exit of the drive-through to allow just for that sort of thing, larger articulated vehicles could maneuver, navigate that turn easily.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again for the presentation. I have a similar concern with pedestrian safeties, especially going through the walkway heading to both the drive-in restaurants. If you've ever been a customer of the present Tim Hortons, I consider that layout to be quite unsafe. You've got a lot of cars, you're duplicating the model with both these drive-throughs, exactly like you've got at Tim Hortons. I don't know if you've ever physically walked them and been there in the customer. I don't consider that to be safe. And in my view, that needs to be addressed before we approve this subdivision.
Comments, sirs?
Ali, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the example that's referenced. All I can say again is, you know, our firm does hundreds of these drive-throughs under various brands across Ontario and the country, and you know, knock on wood, there haven't been any lawsuits at this point. The drive-throughs are designed to be safe for pedestrians. The point where the crossing happens is always at the end where our customers have already stopped to pick up their meal. And so there is always warning signage as you turn your head and are about to embark to note that, you know, this is a pedestrian crossing point. You know, there are also open corners, so it's not that you have the risk of, you know, somebody walking out from behind a concealed corner right into your path of travel. There's always some distance. So, you know, these have been considered carefully, and they are a model that, as I said, I'm sure McDonald's could attest to this also, that has been used very successfully and very safely across the country. So I'm just going to say again, you know, we have every confidence that there is no hazard to any people coming to our property by car, choosing to park and walking past the drive-through to get to the entrance.
Stephen, would you like to comment on that at all? Stephen, are you there? Maybe I can't be heard.
Unless he's on mute.
I see the deputy clerk is just unmuting him, and Councillor Olson, I do see that you have a question, so I'll bring you up next.
Okay. Councillor Olson?
Yes, thanks, Neil. I think,
Mr. Berner, yeah.
I think just yep, I think I've unmuted.
We can hear you,
we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I think as Mr. Hamdi also said, and I think the issue is one that we've obviously handled in numerous locations, not just in Ontario, but throughout Canada. And I think the issue has been well addressed. We have, you know, sometimes we could put speed bumps. We have markings in the drive-through, and as Mr. Hamdi said, cars are at a stop at that point in time where the pedestrians would cross. So it's one that, you know, we've addressed it throughout our locations, and it has not been a problem. So it's not one that we're concerned about as a corporation at all.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Hildebrand, any further comments?
Comment I've had is this thing and then taking it off through the Tim Hortons that it hasn't found it and addressed the situation there.
I don't know if it was just us, but we couldn't really hear you. Could you say that again, Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the question I have is the Tim Hortons layout that we presently have is exactly what's being duplicated here. And I consider that to be unsafe the way it's laid out. That's exactly where we have now. I've used that location many times. It's a congested area. It's a lot of traffic, a lot of people walking back and forth. I think there has to be another review of those areas.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I believe they've already addressed them. Any other comments? Councillor Olson? No, I'm sorry, you're muted, Councillor.
Oh, Holly's got it. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of comments. First of all, I really appreciate seeing drawings like this. They're very, very easy to read and interpret. I also want to comment on the jobs that are going to be created. Those are valuable to our community. I also appreciate the fact that there's several accessible routes to Highway 20, and by my count, I think I see two ramps in the front at each end of the large building, and one end at the McDonald's where it's at grade. So I appreciate that. I would like to know though how wide that ramp is, because I couldn't find the scale. I think it's 1.78 meters, but I'm not sure.
Councillor, which ramp are you referring to?
Either the east or west ramp. They look like they're the same size on the end of building 2.
Yeah, so there are two ramps ramp that is on the west side is 1.8 meters wide, and
Okay.
the one that's on the east side of Building 2 is 1.85 meters
Okay.
wide, so
Okay.
6 feet.
Okay, thank you. I had the wrong number, so. And my next question's to the fire chief. I was looking at the fire routes, and trying to locate a hydrant on the bottom right-hand corner there, and I guess that would be, I found 4 hydrants, and I was looking for one in that area, near the parking lot of Building 3 there.
Chief, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay.
Hydrants are located in such that that meets the code for distance to the front entrance from the point of, there's a couple of measurements, but they're within the code distance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other, I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. My concern is delivery vehicles. Where will they be able to pull up to, to make their deliveries? Because I know sometimes, like for example, McDonald's, they'll have quite a large truck coming in. So, how would those vehicles be accommodated, both at the restaurants and the rest of the strip plaza?
Yeah, no problem. I don't know if we have the ability to put the drawing back up again, but if you have it handy, the way the McDonald's will work is we anticipate that the trucks will come in off of Wellspring Way. Again, if you have the drawing in front of you, the area immediately to the south of the McDonald's, it's articulated with a sort of a hatched diagonal line work. If you are able to zoom in tight, you can see we've even identified a loading ramp. Anyway, that's where the truck is expected to back in. And so we've got an allowance for a radius that would allow a truck to properly back in and unload the goods. And what they would do is they will pull forward on a forward motion and drive through the site heading east, and then make the left towards Regional Road 20 and exit that way. The loading for McDonald's would be the same. Of course, they're not backing into the loading for Starbucks would be the same. They're not backing into McDonald's. They would go east off of Wellspring, and they would back in. You could see sort of in the, if you want to sort of call it the first bend of the drive-through at the Starbucks. Again, a hatched area is indicated. This is where we expect the loading truck would rest while it unloads its goods and pull out. In terms of the multi-tenant building, the voting for this is a little more informal, I would say. The sort of tenants that are anticipated would not be using tractor trailers. We would expect that they would be using cargo vans or vans, that sort of thing. And so the expectation is that, they would temporarily use one of the parking stalls that are provided in the parking field and walk the goods in likely through the front door.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure you gentlemen are aware of the news reports with regards to the dangers of the parking lots in McDonald's. But if you check it out, if you look at the report of the Bathurst and Steeles, there was an accident, and what it describes, a 47-year-old driver was exiting the drive-thru when they took a right-hand turn in the parking lot where the elderly man was walking. Exactly what I'm referring to. And that's why I'm asking for a review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? I do see we do have the planning director with us. Madam Director, without openly putting you on a spot, any comments from the planning department on this development?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, certainly the site plan has been reviewed by various town departments as well as regional agencies with respect to access, circulation, in particular with respect to the pedestrian safety that is raised in terms of the entrance to the buildings and the location of the drive-throughs. The design guidelines that we have for the East Fonthill secondary plan area do not support the drive-throughs visible from the street. They want them hidden. And so that's why the drive-throughs are where they are located. It's to be consistent and compliant with the design guidelines. And certainly the safety aspect is taken into consideration. There is line painting to illustrate the location of the pedestrian crosswalks. These are considered to be very safe. We've looked at it. I've certainly have gone to the Tim Hortons site numerous times to kind of experience that environment. And I personally have not found any issue with respect to safety, but we have looked at the site plan and ensured it complied with the design guidelines and the site master plan, as well as ensuring that it meets kind of the requirements for each of these users in terms of them being able to service their customers and clientele. As Mr. Hamdi indicated, there's a lot of competing things that we look at when we're reviewing the site plans to ensure that it works. But certainly it's gone through a very detailed and technical review at the staff level, and we are comfortable with it and are prepared to recommend this site plan to council.
Thank you, Madam Director. Any other questions, comments on the presentation? Not seeing any. I again thank the presenters for coming to council tonight with your plans and for your presentation. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that council receive the presentation from Crown Grove Estates Incorporated regarding the site plan agreement for the Shops on 20 for information. And as noted earlier, there is an item later on the agenda for council to consider. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is no regional report this evening. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of minutes. So I have a motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. SC 16, Special Council of November 16th. C19, Regular Council of November 16th. To you, Mr. Mayor, for errors and omissions.
Any comments, questions on these minutes? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, wait,
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Olson
Yes,
has a comment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, an item on the agenda for the minutes for the regular council meeting, referencing the Remembrance Day ceremonies at the Legion. Councillor Hildebrand was in attendance as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay, thank you. I'm not certain if that was part of the mayor's report, but I'll check into that.
Okay, thank you.
So on the motion for the minutes then, Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. We don't have any business arising from the minutes listed. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is request to lift consent items for separate consideration.
Councilors, after looking at the consent agenda, does anyone wish to lift items? And I see Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to lift item 8.1 and 8.4.1.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other agendas that a councilor would like to lift? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the December 7th, 2020 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. And so we would start with 8.2, being the minutes of public meeting under the Planning Act November 9th and Committee of the Whole November 9th, Committee of the Whole November 30th. And staff report, training and development, 2020-0155, Chief Administrative Officer's report for information. 8.4.1 was lifted for separate consideration. 8.42, Font Hill Lions Club correspondence be received and referred to consideration of part of the 2021 Council Pelham grant process. 8.4.3, Royal Canadian Legion Branch 613 municipal grant request to be referred to staff for consideration as part of the 2021 grant requests. The Pelham Finance and Audit Committee recommendation be received and that council approve and recommending that the council approve and endorse the 2020 year-end audit service plan from Deloitte, receiving that for information. The notice of the First Nation deer harvest in Short Hills Provincial Park. A letter from Dave Nicholson regarding ICANN City's appeal, that council received the correspondence, and from Niagara Cycling Club's Alliance supporting the Pelham Active Transportation Committee bicycle priorities. Correspondence item 8.54 from a memorandum from Deputy Kate Manchin-Smith, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, regarding the Reopening Ontario Act for information. Correspondence from Peter Moffat and Nancy Valentino with regard to zoning amendment AM 09-2020. Correspondence from Hugh Brand and Jay Morrison with regard to zoning amendment application AM 09-2020. Pelham Library Board minutes from August 26th and September 30th. Mayor's Youth Advisory minutes from August 27th. Pelham Seniors Advisory minutes from March the 12th. And the Finance and Audit Committee minutes from October 28th. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions on the consent items.
Any question? Oh, I see Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the treasurer, there's 2 items for requests for municipal grants. Have those been considered in our operating budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, right now, we currently have in the 2021 budget $25,000 for the municipal grants. A report will be coming to council in January with all of the requests and the recommendations from staff.
Okay, thank you.
So they'll be part of the consideration, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hildebrand, did I see your hand? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the treasurer, in item 8.3.1, there's a percentage you give as a percentage of a budget, 0.55%. It has to do with the training budget. What does that represent in terms of dollars?
130,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And so this vote will start with Councillor Hahn. Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Mayor, there are two items that were lifted. First is item 8.1, presentation and recommendations arising from Committee of the Whole or Policy and Priorities Committee. And we have a recommendation to approve the recommendations from the public meeting under the Planning Act, November 9th, special Committee of the Whole meeting of November 9th, which was continued to November 30th, special Committee of the Whole November 30th. One was with regard to the capital budget, one was with the operating budget, and that council approved the 2021 capital budget as amended, and that the 5-year capital forecast be received for information.
Okay. And Councilor Hildebrand, you lifted 8.1. Go ahead, sir.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like a motion to divide and separate 8.1, approval of the capital budget, and 8.1, November 30th budget, wastewater budget, from the other two items on the agenda there.
Okay, sir. Any comment, questions on the councillor's amendment? Or move, I guess it was, it wasn't.
A motion to divide is just a request.
Okay.
So then we will call for the vote on the remaining items. So it would be save and accept the motion regarding approval of the capital budget, and save and accept. Members of council, I just need to get that recommendation sheet out to see what recommendation it is for the water and wastewater budget. So that would be a recommendation from Committee of the Whole November 30th with regard to the operating budget. Recommendation number 8. Is that correct, Councillor Hildebrand? That's what you want voted on separately?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. So the rest of the vote, save and accept those items. And I will start this voting again with, keep my records straight here, with Councillor Hahn. Councillor Hahn, sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again, please?
Oh, so we're voting on everything except the approval of the capital budget and November 30th operating budget meeting, item number 8, recommendation number 8, which is with regard to the water and wastewater budget.
Accept that as well. Okay, then yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. And that motion carries. Save and accept, okay. So now we would go back to the approval of the budget, and I'll read the recommendation into the record for the members of council. Be it resolved that council received report 2020-187, that council approved the 2021 capital budget as amended, and that the 5-year capital forecast be received for information. So is there, the councillor lifted this for separate consideration, so you can turn to him. He does have a question.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The reason why I lifted that for special consideration was the fact that I will not be supporting approving this at this point. The reason for that is, at this point, we have $220,000, which I call the COVID factor, which amounts to almost 1.5% of an increase in taxes. And that on top of the 4.7 whatever we're going to already approve for the operating budget, brings us into the region of a tax increase of 6.2%. Without knowing what that number is going to be for the COVID factor, without having the flexibility to adjust the capital budget as well as the operating budget to bring things in line where I think they should be, I will not be approving the capital budget today.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments on this item? Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor to the treasurer, time frame. What do we know about the time frame with regards to the COVID payment from the government?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what we've heard is that they will announce whether we're successful or not with the phase 2 funding by the end of this fiscal year. So by December 31st. That's all we've heard.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm in agreement with Councillor Hildebrandt. I don't see that there's a rush to get this budget passed until we know the implications of what kind of funding we're going to get. It's not that far in the future, and it should easily be deferred until the beginning of January.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, and just point of clarification for either the CAO or the treasurer, the capital budget is funded through reserves and it has nothing to do with the lack of operating funds. The capital budget doesn't impact the residents as far as their tax is concerned. So just like to have confirmation of that.
Madam Treasurer?
Yep, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the only increase that we put in this year for the capital, the transfer to the reserves is $150,000. That's the change from last year. So the operating budget does have money in there that is transferred to the reserves, which is transferred to the capital budget. So that's how it's funded. But the only increase from last year is $150,000 from the amount that we transferred, which, as we know, is still way below what we should be transferring to the reserves. We're extremely underfunding it. So as we discussed when we looked at the capital budget, that we wouldn't want to decrease any of the allocation, regardless if you take things off the capital budget to the allocation to the reserves, because they are extremely underfunded. I think that's what Councillor Wink is referring to.
Mr. CAO?
For my part, I don't think it's the role of staff to interject themselves in a debate about how you proceed. The budget is now council's. It's been in council's hands for a month and a half or so. But I would submit to you that the water and rate budget has nothing to do whatsoever with tax increases. It is not taxpayer supported. It is user supported. The business case for the increases there is something that this council has approved, endorsed in principle, and we've been following well for several years now. And you will recall that the rate increases there will only bring us up into a tie for the second, will still be the least expensive in Niagara. It will bring us up to a virtual tie, well, with last year's rates in Niagara Falls. So regardless of which philosophy wins out in this debate as currently occurring, I'd like to strongly encourage you not to involve. The water and rate budget is just conceptually separate. It has nothing to do with this and tax rates whatsoever. And passing it allows us to start to run the RFPs, to do the work we need to do to continue to provide that critical life service safely for next year. You've reviewed it. You've asked questions about it. You've debated it. As a group, you're generally supportive of where it's at, and I'd ask you to maybe consider at least treating those two differently in this motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I understand the water and wastewater is funded, separately, and I'm pay-per-view, but it's quite a jump for 1 year, especially with the difficulties a lot of families are facing with job losses and layoffs due to COVID. So I'm hoping that possibly we could spread that increase over 2 budgets rather than one. Or lower this one and, kind of divide it up.
No, okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I would be in favor of postponing these decisions until some of these things become clearer, with the understanding, of course, that the tax increases are probably going to be too high. The way they stand, and we need to cut back.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, I would agree with Councillor Olson and Councillor Hildebrand as well. I would like to know where we stand as far as some of the things coming to light with regards to COVID payment. If we can wait till after December 31st, what's another week or two after that? We might have some knowledge then that we don't have now. With regards to Councillor Stewart and her suggestion with regards to spreading out the increase in the water wastewater over 2 years versus 1, I agree that for some folks it's going to be a difficult year, and I think we have to recognize that. That's a pretty steep increase. Was it 7 and 9, something like that, for the users to be paying that increase? So I would be supportive of that.
Okay. I see Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of things. I would like to make a recommendation to divide the capital budget from the wastewater budget, make 2 separate recommendations or decisions with respect to these 2 budgets. And I will also say with respect to the water wastewater budget, this is something that we've discussed, debated, agreed upon for the last 2 years, because we've been so far behind with respect to our, number one, our reserves with respect to water, wastewater. But number 2, we all agreed last year, year before, that we would be providing these increases over a number of years. So to divide it, and I understand softening the blow, but I can't support the fact that we've made a plan. Like, why are we not sticking to the plan?
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, questions on this? So, Madam Clerk, what do we do with Councillor Wink's amendment? Or
through you, the first vote is with regard to the approving the capital budget and receiving the 5-year capital forecast. And we will consider the water and wastewater recommendations separately. So the motion is that council approve the 2021 capital budget as amended and that the 5-year capital forecast be received for information.
any other questions, comments? I see Councillor Hahn.
Through the Mayor, just getting back on the topic of the water. I think when we made our plan, I think we can all agree that nobody would have ever predicted we'd be in a worldwide pandemic. So just having some heart here to spread it out over a couple of years with that increase. I just also wanted some clarification from the treasurer. The increase that we had from water, wastewater last year was what?
It was the same. It was, it averaged 8.5 between both of them. So it's the same. But the reason why, don't forget, Pelham had at least 4 years of no increases to water and wastewater in the past that put Pelham way behind everyone. And so when BMA in 2018 came and did the study, the rate study, they acknowledged that the rate was too low to fund the future capital needs of the water and wastewater system. And that's what they're assessing the rate on that.
Thank you. No, I completely realize we have some catch up to do. I fully recognize that. I'm just thinking, just based on the events of this year and perhaps next year too, that it would be a lot easier, I think, for people to stomach an increase over 2 years and not just one budget.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Any other questions? Okay, Madam Clerk.
So again, members of council, this is with regard to the capital budget only. I will call for the water and wastewater separately next. Okay? So with regard to the capital, I will start the voting with Councillor Hahn.
No. Okay, I wonder if the discussion has led everyone to consider that this budget should be postponed, perhaps it would be more appropriate to call for a motion to refer consideration of the budget to the January meeting. Because if this is defeated, then the motion is lost and we're sort of left in limbo with regard to the budget unless the CAO would have something to add to that. The proper motion would probably be to defer the budget.
Mr. CAO, any comments on that? Is that the way
I agree. If this gets defeated, you're in a procedural morass, right. Understanding that you've had a budget session on capital, you discussed it as a group, you had the documents in front of you. This discussion didn't occur then. You've had a budget session on water and rate. This discussion didn't happen then either. If these things get defeated, then you will need a supermajority of council somehow to go and pass our budgets. So I'd certainly encourage you not to defeat these budgets this evening. You'll create an enormous problem for yourselves in addressing your statutory duty to pass a budget for next calendar year when the time comes to do it sometime in January, if that is the will of this council. So defer is much preferable.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. So we need a councillor to put forward a motion, and Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will make that motion to defer the approval of the capital budget to the January budget meeting and the COVID.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk.
So I did see Councillor Hahn's hand up. I'll take her as the seconder.
Okay.
So that the motion will be that consideration of the 2021 capital budget be deferred to the January meeting of council. Councillor Hildebrand, did I understand you to say you want pending results of the COVID funding announcements?
Thank you.
That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we will start this vote with Councillor Hahn.
Just point of clarity here. So I'm voting to, if I say yes, I'm voting then to defer this to January then, correct?
That's what the vote is now, for deferring the consideration of the capital budget to January.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries, so consideration will be deferred. And the next item for discussion is with regard to the, receiving the 2021 operating budget as amended, and that committee recommend an increase in the water rate of 7.49% and the wastewater rate of 9.51% for the meeting this evening for approval. So if council wanted that deferred as well, I would need a motion for that.
Okay, is the councillor willing to put a motion forward to defer until January? I don't see a motion coming forward, Madam Clerk.
So then, is there any further debate on the motion to approve the water?
Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, was there not a motion though put forward to span the increase over two budgets? I believe that Councillor Stewart put that forward.
I didn't take that as a motion, but I certainly can if Councillor Stewart wants to make that as a motion.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to put that motion forward. Thank you.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Any comment? Oh, Mr. CAO?
Well, could we have some specificity? You're not right now capable of passing a budget for 2022. So if you're talking about reducing an increase for 2020 with something other than what is currently anticipated, I think we require the specificity of what it is you want to pass for 2021.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, then in accordance with the CAO's comments, that would be an amendment to the motion by changing the rates.
Mr. CAO, do you agree with that assessment?
And giving a number.
Well, you have to pass a number.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Stewart, you put forward the motion. Council has been told that we have to pass a number. Could you please put forward a number?
Yes, but before I do, Director of Finance has had her hand up, so let's listen to Ms. Quinlan.
Ms. Quinlan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want council to be aware that, the BMA 2018 user rate study had a 5-year study. So we were projecting these increases for 5 years in order to get the town back on track. So if you're changing the rate this year, does that mean that the difference will go added on to next year will be even higher? I'm just asking that question in order to stay in line with what's needed for the capital infrastructure for water, wastewater. That's what this whole rate is based on. I just want council to be aware of that there is a plan that was approved in 2018.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Could you refresh our memories, perhaps, that at the increase that we were going to pass at, what would that have been to the average taxpayer in?
For the water, wastewater, the increase would be $73 a year.
Thank you.
The average household, $73.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Councillor Olson, is that your hand I see up?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be voting against the motion because I think we have to catch up with this. We can't let ourselves get behind on another aspect of our financial health.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion? Councillor Hildebrand.
As much as I don't like to see this kind of increase, I will be voting to not approve the motion.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other comments? Councillor Wink.
So just for clarity, Councillor Hildebrand, you're going to support the the increases as proposed?
That's exactly what Councillor Olson and I recommended, yes.
And I will add to that I will be voting in favor of that also.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess the option here is to withdraw the motion as it doesn't have support.
Oh, okay, Councillor Stewart, if that's your wish, that's what we can do, Madam Clerk.
So members of council, we are at the motion that the 2021 operating budget be received as amended, that the committee recommend an increase in the water rate of 7.49% and the wastewater rate by 9.51% for council approval at the meeting scheduled for December 7th. So it's to approve those amounts. And I just need to put a new vote in here. And this voting will start with Councillor Hahn, unless there's further discussion on the vote.
Not seeing any.
Councillor Hahn?
Yeah.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Can I just clarify, Councillor Hahn, that yours was no? I had a hard time hearing you.
Yes, it was no.
Thank you. The motion carries. The next item that was lifted from the consent agenda is the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority resolution with regard to Bill 229. The resolution presented on the consent agenda, be it resolved that Council receive the correspondence from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Sorry, I just need to enlarge my screen. Dated November 16th regarding changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and Conservation Authorities' role in land use planning, and that Council endorse and support the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority resolution appended thereto, and that the clerk notify all parties. Mr. Mayor, to you for discussion. We do have Regional Councillor Hewson and MPCA CAO Chandra Sharma available to answer any questions of Council.
Councillor Hildebrand, as you know, we do have Councillor Hewson and the chairman of the MPCA. So any questions or comments? Go ahead, sir.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for both of those individuals for showing up today, because one of the questions I had for myself, I need someone to explain the implications, because the implications of this letter to me are not clear. And I want to know what exactly you're asking us to recommend or approve as a council when we're approving that letter. If you could explain the details of what you're exactly asking for.
Go ahead, Councillor Hewson, perhaps.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm gonna let Chandra, our very capable CAO, who has an extensive professional background in this sector, articulate what those changes are.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Chairwoman.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you, Member Hewson. Really delighted to be here. Thank you for welcoming me. I started with NPCA January of this year, and it's been an interesting journey. I'm looking forward to working with your CAO and the council and supporting Pelham in any way I can. I also want to take this opportunity to say that NPCA has made significant progress over the past 2 years under the leadership of the new board, Member Hewson, who used to be our vice chair last year. So I'm really delighted to be here. I come from Toronto, where I worked for 20 years with the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. The report in front of you today is something that NPCA board considered in November at their November meeting. And it was at the time when Bill 229, along with Schedule 6, pertaining to Conservation Authority Act changes had just been introduced, and we were analyzing the changes that this bill was moving forward. A lot has happened since this report went to the board. As you know, last week, all of last week, after the second reading, the bill was referred to a standing committee of the province. Standing committee did their 3-day of hearing and deliberations last week. Some of the recommendations put forward by conservation authorities and our partners, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, have been accommodated on the governance side of things, I will say. There's still a lot of outstanding changes that have been proposed on the planning side and permitting side of Conservation Authority work that have not been changed. As well, there have been some new amendments that were introduced at the standing committee level that I will speak to briefly.
Oh, you froze, Mr. C. Oh, there you go.
Okay, sorry. I don't know where I was when I froze, but what I was saying is the standing committee has referred with their amendments the bill to the legislature, and as of today, it was going through the third reading. The legislature rises on December 10th, so they will make a decision in the next 2 days. And if after my update, the council seems deems appropriate, you can send a letter to the Premier showing your support. Niagara region has adopted a resolution, City of Hamilton, several local municipalities, and we've got a lot of support from AMO, big city mayors, Federation of Ontario Agriculture, a lot of NGOs, and several municipalities, City of St. Catherine, Port Colborne, Grimsby is going to entertain that in a few days. And the timing is certainly not perfect. This has come at a very difficult time and has been compacted in a very short time frame. Now, going back to the changes, let me say when it was first introduced, and if you see the report, there were several governance-related changes that we had serious concerns about. Some of those have been addressed as to the appointment of who gets appointed to Conservation Authorities Board, whose interests they represent when they sit on Conservation Authority boards, and amendments related to who makes the decision on what services conservation authorities provide to their municipal partners. So some of those changes have been addressed. What's still outstanding is number one, on the permitting side of things, minister, if the conservation authority hasn't issued a permit in a given time frame, the proponents can go to the minister and the minister can issue a permit. Not only that, if there is an appeal and the appeal has been entertained by a conservation authority board, at that point, it can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal. And at that point, a CA decision, conservation decision on a certain application can be taken over by LPED and the minister. Now, it is not clear what kind of science they will use in issuing a permit on those files. We also think it's going to cause a lot of delay and confusion at different levels between the local municipality, regional municipality, conservation authority, and the proponents and the minister themselves. The other change that has been introduced is the minister's zoning order. And basically what the new amendments are now requiring Conservation Authority to issue mandatory permits in the land use planning regime if the minister has passed an MZO, which is the municipal zoning order. Not only that, we are also being asked to enter into compensation negotiations with the developer in that situation. So that sort of change has been a little troubling because, as you know, the Conservation Authority role in land use planning is important from a perspective that we act as an advisor to municipal partner, looking at the hazard management mandate, because the watershed boundary, that the science we use is the watershed. We know what's happening upstream can impact downstream, and that's where our comments come from. We look at the natural hazards, both to communities and the natural systems and the environment. So what happens in that situation is now the minister can pass a zoning order and we cannot deliver on our mandate of natural hazard protection. The other thing that has come with that change in land use planning is appeal to LPAT. Conservation authorities in Ontario own a large amount of land. We are the second largest landowners, and we have just lost, through these changes, our right to appeal on decisions that happen on our own land. So for instance, if there is an infrastructure project proposed on conservation land, we will have to go through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. We cannot directly appeal as a body in the land use planning system. So those are some high-level changes that conservation authorities have been, and I'm not going to go into the detail. There's various other things, a lot of details. The other thing is our mandate itself. There's some changes to the mandate of Conservation Authority in the mandate section that kind of limits our mandate from the broader open mandate of natural resource management to now what is prescribed in the legislation as core mandate and non-core mandated activities. So those are some of the changes. Conservation authorities in general were told that these are being introduced because the province wanted to streamline, reduce red tape, bring some accountability. We were all respectfully wondering what this really means in that regard, because most conservation authorities are accountable to our regional partners who provide funding. We do our accounting properly. Our financial statements are audited. So there's lots in there. Anyways, I'll stop at that and take any questions.
Okay, first, Madame Sharma, the amendments you spoke of, you realize that there were amendments made today to the Conservative government put forward. Did those amendments you just spoke of, did they include the ones that the government did today?
No, I'm not. I've been so busy just reporting, answering to the meeting calls, and the amendments that were done as of Friday, the standing committee, I spoke to those. Those were the governance-related amendments that were introduced. I'm sorry, I'm not aware if there was any amendments put forward today as part of the discussions.
Yes, well, there's, I also am not up to date on what those amendments were, but I can't help but wonder to ask this council to comment when changes are being made as we speak. I will leave that up to council. I have very strong feelings on this. I will speak not now. I will speak last. Councillor Houston.
Yeah, I just wanted to add. I think a big thing, and we are asking for the town of Pelham to help support, asking for the province to come back to the table to discuss these issues with both the public, our municipalities across Ontario, and our conservation authorities. I think there's all of these groups are partners together in achieving what's best for our environment and for our communities. But what I wanted to really point out here was there's really fast tracking this process. There is a process in place when you want to make changes to environmental policy, and that involves the Environmental Bill of Rights registry. And had they put these changes through the regular process, there would have been a window of 30 days for public consultation and input in order for the public to have a say in the changes that are being put forward. What I can only describe as sneaking it into the budget bill, it reduced that 30-day period of public consultation to a 3-day window where you could submit something, but it went to a standing committee that consisted of partisan members. So my point is we do need the consultation. We need everyone at the table to identify how we can improve the system and how we can improve some of these policies. And I don't think the process that's being followed here adequately engages those partners.
Thank you. If I can just quote from the Sam Oosterhoff, the MPP, in a letter that he sent out to his constituents, in the coming weeks, the government will be consulting further. So it seems to me as if the government is putting this out, but he is allowing for consultation to be further between the two parties. But anyway, that's just what he says. He's written out to his residents. We'll go turn to council. Any questions, comments? Councillor Olson. Oh, wait, before, Councillor Hildebrand, you did have the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think I have an understanding now of what they're speaking about, because I was particularly interested in the LPAT and how that process was to be deemed necessary. I'm still not clear on the whole process. This area is so complicated. I think it's beyond just me having one meeting and coming up with a final decision of what we should be doing on my part.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the delegates. There are some good things in this. I particularly approve of the idea of a farm representative appointed to the Conservation Authority, because I believe they're the real stewards of the land, and especially in Ward 1. And I like the idea of the term limits, because I think there's a need for turnover in such an organization. And that leads me also to believe in the fact that any organization that exists for 61 years the way this has, there should be some kind of review process. And my reading of it indicates to me that we'll have municipalities will have more say over the conservation services we're paying for.
Thank
Well,
you. Go ahead.
I'll just read to you the letter, part of the letter that AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. These changes were not subject to greater consultation and do not reflect what the majority of municipal governments were seeking. In fact, many municipal governments have identified several of these proposed amendments have the potential to create a breakdown in Conservation Authority governance and stymie the operations so that the mandate and goals of the conservation authorities may be frustrated. There is broad consensus and concern, and I would say even alarm for some of these changes. I'm not saying all of the changes are bad. I'm saying that the process was definitely flawed in how they're being pushed through, and there needs to be more consultation. And I'm really disappointed that the public consultation was hacked away the way it was. But there's an opportunity to come up with changes together. And that's why they're asking for to reconsider that schedule and do it in greater consultation with the municipalities and with the public.
Okay. Ms. Sharma, I see you had your hand up.
I just, if you give me 1 minute, I'll clarify Councillor Olson's comments. We welcome agriculture representative. There are some areas where we haven't expressed any concern. They sit on our public advisory committee right now. So we like to work with all stakeholders. That's not an issue at all. Just wanted to clarify. This is not the first time in 60, 70 years that the Conservation Authority Act has been opened and updated. There have been several amendments in the past. And this round of amendments, it's been going on for 3 years, I would say. There was a huge consultation, if you remember, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and the act was updated. So what was going on right now was there were some unproclaimed section of the act that we were working with this government on developing regulations around. And instead of that process unfolding on regulations about those sections, what has happened that is this has gone through a major push to change the legislation itself. So some of the new legislative changes to the planning and permitting rules have been inserted on top of what has already been going on for the past 3 or 4 years. So I just want to bring some clarity to that.
Okay, thank you. And if Councillor Hewson can indeed quote a government agency, let me quote a landowner, if I may. I'm hoping that the regulations, when they get them out, will be such that conservation authorities have a lot less power, says Kyle Cronk, president of Lake Erie North Shore Landowner Association. Cronk is involved in an ongoing dispute with the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority regarding the planned construction of a retaining wall along his lakeshore property. Citizens should have the right to protect their property, says Cronk, who participated in the province's public consultation sessions earlier this year. The policy should not be left up to the bureaucrats to direct us, because landowners are better conservation people than the conservation bureaucrats themselves. End of quote. Just a different viewpoint of the situation. And that's why I read it. Anyway, any other questions, comments? So my comments are this, if I may be so bold. I believe that the NCPA provides many services within the boundaries of the region and has been doing so for some 69 years. However, like all government agencies that have been operating for this period of time, perhaps it is time to have its terms of reference redefined and its operations brought under review. And I believe that that's what the government is doing. They're resetting the mandate of some conservation authorities. The fact that we have to go to LPAP, I know as a municipality, we've had to do that many times if there's a dispute in planning. So I really, if it slows down the process, the fact that it is an appeal process, I think is a good thing. So myself, I personally will not be supporting writing a letter against this bill. Obviously, it's a council's decision. Any other comments on this? Madam Clerk, what's the...
So through you, Mr. Mayor, as listed on the consent agenda, moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand, be it resolved that Council received the correspondence from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority dated November 16th, 2020, regarding changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and the Conservation Authority's role in land use planning, and that Council endorse and support the MPCA resolution appended thereto, and that the clerk notify all parties. If there is no further discussion.
And I don't see any, Madam Clerk.
And it's part of the consent agenda, which started with Councillor Hahn.
I'm always the first one to go.
It's still on the consent agenda, that's why.
Every single time. Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
No.
And Mayor Junkin.
No.
So the motion is lost.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank Councillor Houston and Ms. Sharma for coming to our meeting tonight and for providing us with information. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Make sure that we got everything. Mr. Mayor, we're now at the staff reports requiring action, agenda item 10.2. The first report is item 10.2.1, moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2020-177 for information as it pertains to file Site Plan 02 of 2020 for 160 Highway 20 East, and that the bylaw be presented for Council consideration at the next meeting. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Comments and questions on this bylaw. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will not be supporting it. I've made it clear. I've read a news report just recently of an accident in Toronto right at the drive-through, and that's my concern, the drive-through design. I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's dangerous, and therefore I will not be supporting it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Wink.
So in that newspaper report, so this is one incident that you've been able to find in all of Canada, was the design of the drive-through exactly what's being proposed now, where there's signage, there's markings on the ground or whatever. Do we know that that design was exactly as this design.
Councillor Hildebrand, would care to answer that? Or do you know that, Councillor?
No, I do not care to answer that question.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Wink, any other comments?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I will be supporting this application.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be supporting this application as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions before we call the vote? Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, so just so I'm clear, I'm just reading this. You're not asking at this point in time, though, for support. We're just actually saying that we will look at it for the next regular meeting, for consideration at the next regular meeting. So today isn't the final drop dead day, correct?
I believe you're correct, Madam Clerk.
Yes, the bylaw would be presented at the next regular meeting of council, which
Thank
is,
you.
which is
Okay,
December
any other
14th.
questions or comments? Not seen any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. And this vote starts with Councillor Hildebrand.
No.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
The motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda, 10.2.2, moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2020-0178 Corporate Services and that the Treasurer be authorized to transfer non-COVID-19 excess of revenues over expenses to reserves as part of the year-end procedures. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions and debate.
Any questions or comments on this item? Madam Treasurer, would you wish to comment on this? That's pretty straightforward, I believe.
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, not seeing any questions or comments, I will turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the vote, Through you, Mr. Mayor, the vote starts with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
The motion carries. The next item on the agenda, 10.2.3. Moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2020-0181, the 2021 User Fees and Charges, Corporate Services Report. And be it further resolved and recommended to adopt the 2021 user fees and charges and that the necessary bylaw be prepared for consideration at the next regular meeting. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, okay. Any comments, questions on this item? And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. One of the items I've looked at is the cemeteries and its columbarium niche. I've walked through that area many times, and that niche seems to have been a very expensive design, and there seems to be hardly any sales. Is that number that we're charging for that niche appropriate for what we're selling? Because I don't see any movement in that area. I mean, and then we want a perpetual care amount of 15% charged on top of it. Is that appropriate? It just seems it's been hanging on the wall with no movement. That's my observation.
Okay, who wants to comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Director of Public Works.
Yes, thank you. You're quite correct. There's not a lot of interest generally in that service. We have done a review of those rates. They are considerably higher, and that's why I believe we haven't changed the rates for those in some years now.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hildebrand, any further comments?
No, it was just an observation. It just seems if the price isn't right, you'll never sell them. And my attitude is get the price right and sell these things.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I was looking at the fees and for the rentals for recreation and culture, and there's no increase in the fees for the ice time or the gyms or anything this year. What is the rationale for not increasing for next year?
Who wants to? Ryan? Is Ryan here? Oh, of course, that's not fair to Ryan. Maybe Mr. CAO.
I believe, but if Mr. Cook, if you have anything to add, please do speak up. My understanding, based on earlier conversations, is that rather than have an inflationary 2% apply to something that's $3 for skating or $8 for an exercise class, or I don't remember the other numbers off the top of my head, and end up at $3.06 or $8.16 or whatever, like unusual numbers for very small amounts. Generally speaking, the municipal practice is to wait a year or two and then go from $3 to $3.25 or $3 to $3.50. Things, particularly for the smaller transactions, tend to actually attract cash payments as opposed to electronic payment for other things. So that's part of it, at least has been elsewhere where I've worked. And I thought, and also of course this year with COVID and relative lack of use of decreased use of our recreational facilities, both the pool and the MCC, that it may be holding the line this year and not wanting to end up with those sort of unusual numbers is what bore out. Maybe Ms. Quinlan or Mr. Cook have something to add.
Let's go with Ms. Quinlan.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct, David, as Mr. CEO. We were looking at next year and looking at the assumptions, don't forget this budget was done in October. So what is the COVID impact for next year and how much can the public take? So, we didn't feel it was right to increase the rates for the MCC as we're trying to maximize the actual usage. So because of the uncertainty of COVID, we decided to keep the rates the same as 2020.
Thank you. And Mr. Cook, I know you're filling in for the recuperating Director of Recreation. Do you anything to add to the conversation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I think that was already taken care of by the CIO and Treasurer.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I can understand that, but when I contrast that with the increase in the wastewater, which is necessary, where a lot of the use of the community center is discretionary, I find it's an imbalance by increasing the rates on the wastewater and not increasing these rates.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Wink.
So, to the planning director, I read something in the newspaper the other day that the city of Welland recently had an increase in their planning and development fees. And I believe that they were fairly significant from what the article was saying. How do our planning fees compare to other Niagara municipalities, and is there room to adjust them upwards?
To the Director of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Wink. Yes, the City of Welland had undertaken a review of their fees and with respect to the amount of time, staff time it takes to process review and process applications. And historically, their philosophy with respect to application fees was to keep them low as a mechanism to attract development to their communities. So they've just recently undertaken this review. they are recommending or have increased the fees substantially from where they were to more of a pay for service approach or philosophy. And so that's the basis under which their fees are increasing. Now, we did a review of our application fees, I'm going to say about 1.5 years ago. In some areas, our application fees, for example, like an official plan amendment, was lower than in other municipalities, but our other fees, such as site plans and subdivision fees, are in line. So, you know, there's some fees that are somewhat lower, and some of our planning application fees are in line with what other municipalities in Niagara charge. And again, every municipality has a little bit different approach. Some of them are completely user pay. Some feel that, you know, that's also a penalty and they will attract growth or development to their community. So they discount their fees by a certain percentage. And then we have traditionally, since I've been at the town, been increasing the fees on a yearly basis to in step with kind of like the cost of living or rate. So that's why how our fees have gone up in the last 4 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? To the Director of Finance.
Okay, just wanted to mention that the other reason why we didn't increase the ICE fees is that the larger user groups are having an issue meeting the current rates because of the COVID regulations. They have smaller teams. They can only have 10 players on the ice, not 15. So with that, they're not able to increase the number of registrations. So that's we're trying to, you know, we don't want to add an increase in fees as well.
Thank you for that additional information. Any other comments or questions? I'm not seeing any, Madam Clerk. I'll return to you.
Thank you. So this vote will begin with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
That vote carries. The next item on the agenda is item 10.2.4. And we have a motion by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2020-0185, being a letter of support for the Rural High-Speed Internet in Pelham Corporate Services Report. And further, that Council provide a letter of support to Niagara Wireless Internet Company, NWIC, to pursue funding to provide high-speed internet in the rural areas of Pelham. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, for comments, questions on this, and I will go to Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking in favor of the motion and endorsement. Recently, the Niagara this week ran articles and interviewed people from Pelham for the articles, and they were describing their situations as far as internet goes. And people were talking about the mental health challenges they have from being out of contact, the business challenges that they have in trying to conduct internet sales and buying and internet marketing. And they quote people as saying that it's now an essential service, but people who can't connect to good high-speed internet are at a disadvantage. And it's very common for people in the rural areas of Ward 1, and it's not really very rural areas, to have no internet connection at all and have to use their telephones, data plans at a high cost to themselves. And here's another quote: "It doesn't matter whether you're a high school student trying to work at home or working adult or seniors. It's just the way the world works right now across the board. It's now an essential service. There are considerable amounts of money available through the federal government, and we stand to miss out on this kind of financial support from the government. And it's also the policy of the Rural Ontario Municipal Association to support broadband connectivity. The Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Niagara Federation of Agriculture, to support this. And we have to recognize that we can be part of this creativity solution by supporting these sorts of applications.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm looking at a news release. I see that the Ontario government announced an application intake for 150 million, improving connectivity for Ontario program, which is the ICON. So, yeah, including 13.3 million in Niagara. So the money, the government obviously recognizes how important this broadband is everywhere now. It's not just a luxury, it's a necessity, of course, with COVID. So this is exactly, Councillor Olson, you're right, something this council should be definitely supporting. Thank you for your comments. Any other questions, comments on this? Not seeing any, I will turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this vote starts with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that vote carries. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the presentation and consideration of bylaws. So we will divide the bylaws to consider bylaw number 4295 at the end, given the disclosure of pecuniary interest by Councillor Stewart. So I have a motion by Councillor Stewart and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and pass same, and that the Mayor and Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 4294 of 2020 being a bylaw to assume the subdivision known as Rosewood Estates subdivision and to designate the streets shown on registered plan 59M412 as public highways and to name the street accordingly. Bylaw 4296 of 2020 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4107 of 2019 as amended, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of the Town of Pelham Council, its committees, the conduct of its members, and the calling of meetings, to provide for electronic meeting participation for the Council for the Town of Pelham, the Committee of Adjustment and Advisory Committees, and to repeal and replace bylaws 4231 2020 and bylaw 4269 2020. And bylaw 4297 2020 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4054 2020 being a bylaw to appoint a deputy mayor for the 2018 to 2022 term of council. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any comments, questions on these bylaws? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So this vote will start with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that's carried. And now moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand, that Council consider bylaw 4295 of 2020 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4270 2020 as amended, being a bylaw to require the wearing of face coverings in enclosed public spaces and in enclosed common areas of multi-unit residential private buildings during the COVID-19 pandemic, and to extend that date until August 31st of 2021.
Okay. Any comments, questions? I do have one. Who came up with the August 31st date for 2021? How was that arrived at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was aligned with the electronic meetings. And there is a statement in the bylaw that it can be revoked sooner if need be.
Okay, I just asked that because I believe the regions is April 30th.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk?
So we'll start this vote with Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda begins with the motion as presented by Councillor Hildebrand and seconded by Councillor Olson. Councillor Hildebrand, did you wish to read the motion into the record, or do you wish me to?
Through you, Madam Clerk, it would be desirable, because I think it's clearer if you read it.
You'd like me to read it? Okay. Whereas Section 224 of the Municipal Act sets out the role of council as to represent the public and to consider the well-being and interests of the municipality, to develop and evaluate the policies and programs of the municipality, to determine which services the municipality provides, to ensure that administrative policies, practices, and procedures and controllership policies, practices, and procedures are in place to implement the decisions of council, to ensure the accountability and transparency of the operations of the municipality, including the activities of the senior management of the municipality, to maintain the financial integrity of the municipality, and to carry out the duties under this or any other act. And whereas council needs to be made fully aware of all policies and programs to enable council to ensure that appropriate policies, practices, and procedures are in place. And whereas council is responsible for engaging the public to build community understanding of town policies and programs. Now therefore be it resolved that council hereby directs staff to provide reports informing council of 1, all policies, practices, and procedures guiding the town in the hiring of consulting professionals, including but not limited to planners, engineers, architects, and legal counsel. For clarity, this report must address the abilities and limitations of staff to carry out construction projects, including engineering, construction, and inspection. Thresholds, financial or otherwise, for determining consulting professionals are required. Timing of when council is made aware and is expected to approve retaining the consulting professionals. And number 2, all policies, practices, and procedures guiding the town in the preparation of and enter into agreements with consulting professionals. Number 3, all policies, practices, and procedures guiding staff as to when a peer review of consulting professionals' submissions is required. 4, all current and ongoing agreements with consulting professionals. For clarity, this report must include a copy of each agreement the town has entered into, and in situations where no agreement may exist, an explanation as to why an agreement was not required. The reports are required by council by the end of the second quarter of 2021 for all related subjects aforementioned.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And Councillor Hildebrand, your motion, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank you for the opportunity of giving me to speak to this motion. Prior to my decision to run for council, I had engaged the town staff on 2 items. It was the stormwater pond in my area after an issue of either design or inspection. The second was the MCC design review and inspection. I actually sat in the boardroom right next to council chambers and asked this question before construction started. Who's reviewing the design and who's doing the inspection, and where's the peer review? So here we are today, and I basically have the same question in some areas after 2 years on council. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was part of council that approved a subdivision whose planner, engineer, and inspector were all from the same company. I raised the same question again. Conflict, or at minimum, optics were wrong. I have attended a planning meeting this last month where again the same company is doing the planning, engineering, and all 3 major subdivisions. And if things hold true to practice, the town will engage the same company for the inspection. I have visited new homes where the subdivisions have not yet been assumed to deal with drainage issues. Again, when I asked the homeowner for their planning, grading plans, it is from the same company and the same person who approves everything. The grading plan is signed by the engineer with the company, not the surveyor who did the work. This same engineer did the subdivision grading plan and also submitted the information to the planning department for approval, and the money was released. If nothing else, the optics are wrong when you're always seeing the same company involved in every aspect. The question I ask myself, there have to be standards at the town for these plans and these processes. This motion is designed to provide council with detailed reports or a report to provide council with present policies, procedures, and guidelines to allow this council to provide directions through motions that I believe are necessary to guide the staff and fulfill our mandate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any comments, questions to the councillor on his motion? You not seen. Oh, I see Councillor Olson. Oh, Councillor, you're muted.
There we are. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have some doubts about this this motion. Number one, when you're dealing with professionals, you're dealing with professional organizations, people who are members of professional organizations who have set a certain standards, and we have to rely on those standards to work. I know that engineers don't sign things wantonly or without due regard for the safety, and I know that accountants don't approve of, present things on their financial statements or offer opinions on things that are wrong. So we have that level of scrutiny of the activities, and I think we have to place a lot of trust and faith in our employees to make sure that nothing untoward is happening here. In preparation for looking at the motion here tonight, I had a look at the policy manual that was given to me when I joined council in September, and I read it in a little more detail this time, and it's very comprehensive and complete. What is expected of people and what is expected of the reports and things to council. I don't think we want to get into the job of retaining of consulting professionals, because that's not our job.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Olson. Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor. So it's very comprehensive. It's a very long motion. There's put a lot of forethought into it. But I think if I had to put it into just a sentence or two, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Hildebrand, is basically what you're saying is the doer and the overseer should be two separate parties, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I agree with that.
Okay, Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff in general, whoever wants to answer this question, if we were to implement such a motion, how would that handcuff the staff as far as timing and getting projects off the ground?
Mr. CAO, you have the most quizzical look on your face, so I'll ask you.
That was quizzical because I was hoping or praying someone else would answer. However, the buck does stop here. Let me take a first crack at it, and possibly Ms. Weens and Mr. Marr can add some color commentary. Council does possess the policy binder. It has all of our policies in it. That has a number of the answers. Development is hard, and if it wasn't hard, it wouldn't be, everyone would do it, and it wouldn't be as profitable as it is. I think that's just something that needs to be said. It's hard to buy and assemble land and to plan all the pipes and the infrastructure and to make sure it's going to drain, and then chop it up and build a bunch of some sort of housing on it. It's not an easy way to make a living. It's complicated. There are a finite number of, I can't name, I still haven't been here long enough to name all the players in Niagara. but there are a finite number in the area, and there are a half dozen businesses that sort of bid on the work, which is why you keep seeing the names, the sort of same names popping up. If the town develops, and so the town doesn't always retain these, some what we're talking about are professionals we retain to review plans or to give us advice on them, but others are hired by the development industry to satisfy municipal requirements before you can develop land. So it would be somewhat arbitrary for us to force third parties to contract with different third parties simply because we don't like the fact they work for the same company. This organization itself it uses 2 or 3 large financial firms to provide us with a bunch of advice. And so we use accountants and consultants from the same business. They're out of different offices and they have internal firewalls, and their professional licenses allow for that. And that's sort of industry norms. There's nothing fundamentally problematic about that. When we get engineered stamped or survey stamped drawings, it's that stamp we're relying on, and it's that stamp ultimately we have a cause of action against if there's a problem or a failure. We're relying on that person's or that company's professional insurance and the insurance requirements we put in place before certain work can be done, or for us to be able to rely on third-party documentation. Those are generalist answers. So I understand there are plenty of factual instances, I suppose, where there would be difficulty with employees from same organizations checking work of the same organization. But there are plenty of instances where that's not problematic at all. And a bunch of the nature of the industry is, if you're already there doing the work, whether it's plans review or analyzing what's needed, some sort of engineering review, or whether it's actually doing the physical work in the ground, if you're already there and you've already got your equipment there and you've dug up the hole, or you're already there and doing the surveying, it just makes economical sense when we realize there's some sort of problem, something we didn't know about or couldn't have foreseen, to get the next bit of work. And that's not a Pelham issue. That's just kind of what I've seen, how I've seen the development industry and the consulting industry around the development industry work in this part of Ontario and other parts of Ontario. And as far as I'm aware, that's kind of how it works coast to coast. There's just a pragmatic economy of scale. Look, staff are supposed to be neutral like Switzerland. Whatever, if any part of this motion passes, we're happy to comply with. We'll provide you with what information you wish, and I'm sorry that you don't already feel you have it. So we'll be happy to get it to you. But Pelham can't change the face or the structural nature, the basic economics of the development industry. And it isn't fundamentally, engineers have professional requirements and obligations and insurance. And so do the lawyers, the planners, all the people we sort of engage, and who mostly are engaged by third parties, I might add, not particularly the town, in doing this. So this is how this thing works. And Pelham has limited capacity to, in that sense, change the world. That being said, and I don't mean that in a combative sense, that's sort of the nature of that industry. If there are specific areas where council feels either our policy is inadequate or somehow or staff are blind, willfully or otherwise, or just unaware of challenges, we'd be very happy to address those. And like I say, we'll be happy to comply with any part of the motion council sees fit to pass.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Any other SLT member wish to speak on that or not so? And I don't see anyone. I'll go back to council. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Questions, really. Go ahead, Councillor Hahn.
For the mayor. So just for clarification, and whether it's the director of planning or the CEO that wants to answer, you can choose. And that is certainly, I understand we can't control who the developer uses for their various, contractors, sub-trades, et cetera. But as far as the oversight of projects where the town has a say in the matter and is overseeing, that we can choose. So I think if what I'm understanding this correctly, is that if ABC company is the developer and they hire XYZ, it would be a good idea then when the town has to come in and do their inspections and such, that they don't also pick that same organization. I think that's the way I understand Councillor Hildebrand. If I'm wrong, please enlighten me, but that's the oversight component that I think is critical, and I think that's what residents would expect.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Any other comments? Not seeing any. Then we'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you. So I will call for the vote then, and this one does start with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes, of course.
Councillor Olson?
No.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
No.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
No.
The motion is lost. The next item on the agenda is a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council directs staff in conjunction with the Town of Pelham Beautification Advisory Committee to engage with the public to inform them of the various legacy projects available for funding throughout the town. A range of options, including costs, should be provided, including such things as picnic tables, benches, planters, decorations, gardens, etc. This can be marketed to service clubs, churches, and any other type of organization and/or individuals. The paving stone initiatives, both in Fenwick and at the Peace Park Bandshell, were very well received and shows great interest by the community. It is suggested that this initiative be advertised on the town website, the town social media, in local media, and by posters in such places as town facilities, and possibly in local businesses. And this motion is put forward by Councillor Stewart, and I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you if you wanted to read it yourself. My apologies.
No, you did a fine job. Thank you.
Just getting into this routine here.
Any comments, questions to the, first of all, Councillor Stewart, want to speak to your motion?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think we had a small discussion on this before, and if it'll help alleviate some of the expenses the town puts out for benches and such things, if the public is willing to participate in that by using them as memorials or just to advertise their service clubs or whatever, I think it could be beneficial both to the public and to the town coffers.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other, I see Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I'll be voting in favor of this because I think this is an opportunity to really add to our community at very little cost. And one of the things that we're sadly lacking is any money going towards cultural things, and perhaps this can be the source of funds for things such as statues in our parks and perhaps monuments or something. Not necessarily monuments. That's a bad thing to have these days, but I think this is a great idea.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you. And this voting starts with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the notice of motion added to the agenda by Councillor Hahn.
Councillor Hahn, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a notice of motion. I recently learned from a Pelham resident about an important and significant initiative that a courageous and thoughtful 19-year-old woman from London, Ontario is working towards. Maddie Mudridge is calling on the federal government to adopt a 3-digit suicide and crisis hotline. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has increased the demand for suicide prevention services by 200%. Adoption of a 3-digit 988 national number to assist people in crisis is an important initiative and one that will be in place in the United States by 2022. I will ask Council to support this initiative at the next Council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor, for bringing that notice of motion forward. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The next item on the agenda is the resolution to move in closed session. Moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider a matter under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. Pursuant to Section 239(2)K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality. One item. Pursuant to Section 239(2)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. One item, file L04PELH. And pursuant to Section 239(2)E, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality, a general claims update. Mr. Mayor, to you.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, call the vote.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the vote starts with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. And thank you to our viewing public. And we will just take a moment to stop the live streaming.